my boyfriend Steven.
You mean my brother Steven?
Stay away from it,
Tell
dude.
him not to go over there. Hey, no.
Yeah, fire extinguisher won't work here.
And my ex is literally here, bro. Look, there's a security right here, and that's her car leaving right now, bro.
I would bet you watching have an ex, and I would bet that you have some stories that maybe go along with that ex where things didn't go super well. And there's a reason for this, because we're not at our best when we're breaking up with somebody or being broken up with. And today we're going to be watching 3 stories where things did not go well for these folks. I'm going to offer up my reactions to finding these different stories, and then offer up some commentary in terms of some of the context and research as somebody who works and researches in this field as well. And my name is Dr. Jacob Otis. I have a PhD focused on domestic violence and abuse and family dynamics. And I'm not sure why you're here, but I'm glad you're here. So let's get straight into the first one.
Guys, I deadass just got off work, bro. It's 5 in the morning. I work graveyard, and my ex is literally here, bro. Look, there's a security right here, and that's her car leaving right now, bro. This is her, bro.
Dude, I just got a gun fucking pulled on me.
Fucking weirdo, psycho.
Okay, don't do this. She had a gun pulled on her. If you have an ex, man or woman, whoever, and they are waiting outside of your work while you're working graveyard shift or overnight, don't walk up to them and confront them. Call the police and have the police go and check in why they're there. And there was a security guard there, so she's probably not supposed to be there. The company knew as well. And have the police deal with it so you don't get shot or stabbed or ran over. I won't share any stories. I work in domestic violence world. When this sort of stuff happens, confronting them and having to be like, the dominant person to like, have this big show, it never ends well. Do not do it. Record on your phone and call the police. This is not legal advice. This is just common sense. So we're assuming his allegations are all true. This is all alleged. I don't know any more context other than what we've seen here. Is if she's truly, night shift sucks. I work night shift. I was a CNA. You're exhausted. You're not all there. So there's that grain of salt in terms of why he went and confronted her. Probably is just wiped. Probably. But if she's doing what he's suggesting, is she's attempting to apply this kind of coercive control where we try to control other people by doing certain kind of behaviors. And what I suspect is she said, I had a gun pulled on me. And I think what she's doing is trying to tap into his sort of protective instincts or nature to get him to sympathize with her for being, a victim of threatened violence. So he'll come in and spark a conversation with her. And what this is known, it's sort of this obsessive relational intrusion where people really are trying to figure out a way to maintain in contact with you after a relationship is over. And this is where kind of stalking comes into it as well. And this is signaling to me that there might be some deep sort of maybe jealousy going on where she's trying to keep tabs on him to see if he's trying to see anybody else or anything like that. And again, it's this kind of pathological jealousy, Othello syndrome, not diagnosing here from this at all, but kind of these some things that are sort of percolating in the back of my mind as terms of kind of signal. And, I thought that she said, I have a gun, and she was sort of leaking this violent intent towards him, what she's going to do, but it doesn't look that way. So not good. Don't confront people if they're stalking you. Call the police and dip out of there, because that she could have drove a car into him. Just saying, it happens a lot more than you'd think, and especially when people are familiar with your own kind of routines and where you work, those sort of things. So don't do this. Call the police. Record things on your phone and stay safe. Man or woman, any person is capable of doing these sort of things. So just be very, very mindful and protect your safety on these situations.
Why are you gonna let my car? I just fucking got it. Why are you gonna let it on fire? Why? Look, I have nothing now. I have nothing. You lit my car on fire.
Is this
You take my family away from me. You lit my car on fire. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me?
No, I don't think it
Look
is.
what that is. That's all I fucking had. That's where the fuck I sleep, and you light that shit on fire. Are you fucking kidding me?
You left your cigarette.
No, I didn't. A cigarette would not cause that.
Yeah, it
No,
was.
it
Left a
wouldn't.
cigarette?
Yeah, I left it by the center console, yeah? I really did. Yeah? I left it in there.
World star.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep fucking that because you lit my
World
fucking
star.
car on
You
fire.
can't just say
How
that.
the fuck am I not supposed to be getting
Say world star.
Dude, I got shit now. That's how I get to work. That's how I get to work. No.
World star.
You're fucking going to jail. You lit my fucking car on
This is
fire.
going on. World
Fuck
star.
you. Are you fucking kidding me?
Did someone call it?
I called
Did
it already blow up? Ooh, there was something.
No, it already did.
Stay away
Tell
from
him
it,
not to
dude.
go over there. Hey, no.
Yeah, fire extinguisher won't work here. This is a. It's all I had. Is probably homeless.
I'm not gonna go blow up. Are you crazy?
Okay, so for this situation, this is really sad. So what will happen sometimes during a breakup? So we're alleging here, from what we know, this is a breakup, and it sounds like he was all I had is living in his car. So this is fairly uncommon for for people who are homeless. It's known as like the unseen homeless population, where a lot of people going through, life situations, domestic violence is a common one, for example, more so for women, but also for men, is that people will live in their car. And this is up to, different studies show different things. It's hard to track, the homeless population or the unhoused population. 33% to 50% of people who are experiencing homelessness live in their car. That's a huge number. We think of people who are maybe panhandling in those situations. That's absolutely a portion of the unhoused population. But again, that's a third to half of people. And for men in sort of this, domestic violence situation, what will happen sometimes is if maybe he used violence or alleged to use violence, and, the police, kick him out of the home, and the woman and children, or the woman, sort of maintains that housing, that property, is the guy will, move into a hotel room or live in their car. So again, I work in the domestic violence world. A number of people do this. They'll sleep in their truck, in their vehicle, through a domestic violence situation, because hotels are expensive. They can get a Planet Fitness or, an LA Fitness membership, shower there, that'd be their bathroom, and then live in their vehicle. And, it's an unfortunate situation that some people put themselves in through their behaviors, but also people are also subjected to this incredible vulnerability. And again, we're assuming from what we've seen here that she lit the vehicle on fire. So we don't know, obviously, what happened. She alleges there was a cigarette left in there. Who knows? But if it was, we're assuming it was, this sort of instrumental aggression where it's sort of a targeted, almost strategic act of property damage or violence. So what people who are very abusive sometimes will do, it's typically more subconscious versus them planning it out and thinking it out. That's getting into sort of psychopath, sociopath territory. But most people kind of do it with a subconscious goal in mind, where they want to reduce the amount of freedom somebody has. Sometimes it's kind of pettiness or spiteful to get back at them, but sometimes it is strategic in terms of damaging their economic ability. So he had work, he mentioned, so he's thinking, I have to get to work, I don't have a vehicle, how am I going to get to work? So sometimes people do this to isolate people economically, and also mobility wise too. If in the US, at least, if you're watching from the US, almost everybody has a vehicle or relies on public transportation, but a lot of people have vehicles, and that is their primary mode to get from point A to point B, from home to work and home to work. And that is unfortunate in terms of the potential for increased force dependency. So it's possible, and it does happen, believe me, from research and my experience, that people will do these things to force dependency back on them. Your vehicle got burned because you left a cigarette there. You have to kind of move back in with me while we figure out, a situation. Even though we're split up, we'll sleep in different rooms, and then, things escalate, another domestic happens. So it's very possible this is that situation. Otherwise, it could have been he left a cigarette in the car and he's just blaming her for, that situation. But I think the other context here makes it a little suspicious here. So hard to tell from this, minute or so we watched. But yeah, poor guy.
We don't really know each other, and I know
My brother's
you and my
girlfriend.
boyfriend are really close. but I'd appreciate it if maybe you could just stop talking to him because it makes me uncomfortable how close you guys are. So,
What are you talking about?
I read through his text messages with you and I see how much you guys talk and like he has a girlfriend.
You read through his text messages?
I mean, like, yeah, and like I saw your jillion pictures together, and it's honestly embarrassing for me to see how much you guys are like together and like how much you guys talk.
I'm sorry, who are you talking about?
My boyfriend Steven.
You mean my brother, Steven?
What?
Steven's my brother.
I'm assuming she knew that that was her boyfriend's sister. Wow. Okay. So, this happens where people have this, again, it's intense kind of jealousy where it's not just for romantic relationships, it's for attention. So in like evolutionary psychology, there's this phenomenon called mate guarding, where essentially it's like you get your husband or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your wife, and then you have to guard them from other mates, and you have to kind of isolate them almost from other mates. And that's maybe more kind of understandable, right? That's a little more kind of common in terms of, for most people. I understand the kind of the argument at least. This is a whole other level of, again, getting into this. Is not diagnosing anybody here, but kind of this pathological jealousy, Othello syndrome, where people are so jealous that it really kind of becomes a barrier for them in their relationship. And this might be that situation. And early in a relationship, especially in our earliest relationships, like when we're teenagers, when we're young adults, some people, because of their family and their upbringing, have sort of these enmeshment tendencies where people really are trying to, maybe enmesh themselves in that person's life. And it can get to the point where it's unhealthy in terms of boundaries, in terms of understanding that some families, brothers and sisters, parents and their children, are really close. And then some people who don't have that experience and they have low attachment to those people will project that, brothers and sisters shouldn't have this kind of relationship where they text and send memes to each other and call each other and take pictures together because that's just weird. And that's not true. People can have close relationships. I have a great relationship with my sisters, for example. And, and then she's doing this digital surveillance of her boyfriend, and that's sort of kicking up this domino effect of jealousy against her. And then she decides to call her to try to set a boundary with the sister. And I'm assuming the boyfriend maybe is kind of just like there but not doing anything, kind of being a piece of furniture, rather than actually speaking up and saying like, I want a relationship with my sister, so what the heck, girlfriend. So what the girlfriend's doing is trying to gatekeep or gatekeep access. In other words, prevent somebody from having external relationships because they want them all to themselves. And that's a really unhealthy boundary in terms and a behavior because we don't own our partner. They're our own autonomous person. They are their own autonomous person, and we don't own them. So not healthy in terms of a long-term relationship. And what happens is, in these really jealous situations, and it happens in domestic violence and abusive relationships all the time, you have this heightened monitoring of somebody else that I have to catch them doing something because either I'm doing something I'm not supposed to and I want to feel, kind of justified by catching them, or I had a previous relationship where I was betrayed, cheated on, for example, and I'm just kind of hyper aware. But what happens is when we're hyper monitoring somebody else, digitally or otherwise, it leads to this self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, we're gonna find something eventually. Think about like a doctor, like a surgeon. They're always gonna find something to do surgery on. It's kind of the same sort of concept where we're always gonna find something. But what happens is this leads to this really unhealthy control, sense of control, coercive control, and then lower self-esteem for ourselves is one of the kind of the front and back end causes, correlations, and also on the front end, back end. This low self-esteem can be sort of perpetuated almost through this, which is bad for relationships. So, this is a pretty extreme example, and but it does happen. And it's usually, like I said, from projecting our own family values on our relationship, low self-esteem, and a number of other things as well. But I hope the brother maybe had a conversation afterwards and kind of stepped up to the plate here versus having the sister and the girlfriend sort of figure out who gets the boy in terms of the brother or the boyfriend, because that doesn't bode well. And that is all, folks. Thank you for watching. I want to thank everybody who's liked and subscribed and commented on this channel. It's really cool to see, people care about these stories, learning more about these kind of situations, these conflicts, which is what I, study and love doing for my job and my career, and, making those comments as well. I want to especially thank, Stacy Works, Tokapi and Tyrant, and all the other folks who made a comment. I really enjoy reading those and kind of thinking about those. It's fascinating stuff. For me, one question that I got up from Togepi and Tyrant was about kind of the shame aspect of, these different situations. And my view is that shame isn't bad. I see people as full humans that are capable of doing really great things and really not great things. And people sometimes cross that line where they need, maybe some more in-depth help. But I think folks who are, maybe they're not best situation in life and they post it on TikTok, they post other people's stuff on TikTok. I think it's an opportunity to help us tease apart a person from their behavior. We can shame people from their behavior, and I think that's appropriate to do so in a constructive way, in a healthy way. But I am wary about others who maybe will take this person from not great moment in their life and shame who they are as their full character. And I think we as a society need to help think about shame differently. We can tease apart the person from their behavior, condemn their behavior, but still give that person an opportunity to come back into society, do the right thing, seek forgiveness, be accountable and responsible for what they've done. So long, I can go into that more, but I really think it's important that if you're watching this, think about shame differently. It's not, calling somebody out and saying they're a bad human being. It's calling out something they've done or said and calling that out for what it is. So you can do both, in my opinion. So that's all for now. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next video. Toodles.